ended his 13-year exile and returned to China during a period of great change and openness. Liang Qichao and Lin Changmin, two scholars nurtured by traditional Chinese culture, had both gone overseas to embrace modern Western studies. They set out to establish a completely new constitutional government. Meanwhile, they also sought to instill in their own children a new combination of both Western and Chinese education. In 1915, Liang Sicheng entered Tsinghua High School at the age of 14. His classmates included Wen Yiduo, Liang Shiqiu, Huang Zi, and Sun Liren. We found in the yearbook of Liang's 1923 graduating class that he had been very active. As first trumpeter, he led the Tsinghua brass band. He was also the second bass in the Tsinghua choir. Gifted in the fine arts, Sicheng was also editor of the Tsinghua Art Club. In addition, he designed and illustrated the 1923 yearbook, in which he was hailed as an artist with a political mind, a man of letters who never fails to experience romance in his private garden. During Liang's second year at Tsinghua, Lin was accepted at the Peihua Girls' High School, established by the Church of England. At this time, Yuan Shukai declared himself Emperor of China. This was followed by Zhang Xun's attempt to restore the Qing dynasty. In order to protect the Republic, Liang Qichao stepped forward at this critical juncture. The high school years for Liang and Lin appeared to be a time when their fathers were both embroiled in political events. On May 4th, 1919, the massive student movement broke out. The initiators of the movement were none other than their fathers. When World War I ended in 1918, Liang Qichao traveled to Europe. Active in the diplomatic circles of the Paris Peace Conference, he urged Germany to forfeit its rights to Shandong province. Much to Liang's surprise, however, Japan had already sealed a secret deal with China's Doan regime to take over Shandong from the Germans. Extremely disappointed, Liang Qichao attempted to prevent the Chinese delegation from signing the agreement while sending a telegram to alert his comrades in China. On May 2, 1919, Lin Changmin published an article in the Beijing Morning Post entitled China's Diplomatic Alert. 2 days later, some 3,000 students in Beijing took to the streets. Huiyin was only a high school student at the time, but her life changed forever after the May 4th demonstrations. Since her father's article had triggered the event, he had to resign and traveled to Europe, appointed as an observer to the League of Nations. This time, he took with him his 16-year-old daughter, Lin Huiyin.
我此次愿由携汝同行。第一，要汝多观察诸国事务，增长见识；第二，要汝近我身边，能领悟我的胸赐怀抱；第三，要汝暂时离去家庭繁琐生活，彼得扩大眼光，养成将来改良社会的见解与能力。
The father and daughter traveled through Europe together, with 16-year-old Huiyin serving as her father's interpreter and secretary. Lin Changmin said, "A talented daughter is not the kind of bliss to be easily enjoyed by a father. You have to abandon your authority in order to achieve an understanding as a friend on equal footing." In London, Huiyin entered St. Mary's College. Her father, with his charisma and talent, attracted many visitors of various backgrounds. Xu Jimo was one of them. 2 years earlier, determined to strengthen China through entrepreneurship, had earned a master's degree in economics from Columbia University. Before his overseas study, Xu had declared his goals.
方今沧海横流之际，故非一二人之力可以排奥而砥柱。必也即同志，言誓曰：明气节，革必俗。
Exposed to a foreign culture and dynamic academic exchanges, Xu became interested in Nietzsche and Russell. At age 24, in 1920, he gave up his PhD research at Columbia and went to London in search of the English philosopher Bertrand Russell, who was then a professor at Cambridge. Although Xu had already been married by his parents to a woman from his hometown and had a son, after his encounter with the 16-year-old Lin Huiyin in London, he could not resist his love for her.
在半空里涓涓的飞舞，认明了那清幽的住处，等着他来花园里探望。飞扬，飞扬，飞扬。啊，他身上有朱砂梅的清香。
Their encounter in London seemed to have swept the 16-year-old girl by a strange breeze to the doorsteps of English literature. She became enamored with Shelley, Byron, and Keats. However, in 1921, the strange breeze suddenly died down, and the Lins quickly left the UK without saying goodbye. About a year earlier, when the Lins set out for Europe, Liang Qichao had just returned to China from Europe. Liang's decision to leave politics for academia was a turning point in his life. He became preoccupied with his lectures. Liang Shiqiu, one of Liang Sicheng's classmates at Tsinghua, recalled that the other students greatly admired Liang as an erudite and passionate scholar. As Liang Qichao lectured at Tsinghua on the emotions in Chinese verse, at one point he would cover his face, then stamp his feet, and then either abandon himself to laughter or sigh profoundly. Every time he finished a section, he would call out his son's name. Sicheng, wipe the blackboard, please. Then Sicheng would jump up onto the podium and help his father clean the blackboard. In November 1921, the Lins ended their travel in Europe and returned to Beijing. Soon, a new visitor began frequenting their home. He was Liang Sicheng, the eldest son of Liang Qichao.
思成足下，你到家想都好，会病情已略轻减，会命令我详细写信给你。这爸爸真是书记翩翩也，比你的爸爸如何？
The two fathers were bound in friendship, which they intended to strengthen with the marriage of their children. In the spring of 1924, Indian laureate poet Tagore was invited to visit China. Xu Zhimo and Lin Huiyin accompanied Tagore as his interpreters. Zhimo was still deeply in love with Huiyin, and in a letter to his mentor, Liang Qichao, he wrote, "I will seek among thousands of people my one and only soulmate. Should I find her, it is my bliss. If not, it is my fate."
这颗赤裸裸的心，请收了吧，我的爱神。因为除了你，更无人给它温味与生命。否则，你就将它磨成齑粉，撒入西天云。但它京城的颜色，却永远点燃你春朝的心思，秋夜的梦境。怜悯吧，我的爱神。
那一晚，我的船推出了河心，澄蓝的天上托着密密的星。那一晚， 你的手牵着我的手，迷惘的星夜封锁起重愁。
However, the seemingly perfect couple, Xu Zhimo and Lin Huiyin, did not end up together.
那一晚，你和我分定了方向，两人各任取个生活的模样。
Tagore realized what was happening and thus sent a poem to Lin Huiyin before departing from China. The blue of sky fell in love with the green of land. The breeze in between sighed, alas. In 1924, Liang Sicheng and Lin Huiyin took their father's advice and went to the United States to study. Their fathers had hoped that during their studies overseas, they would get to know each other better in preparation for their marriage. Liang Sicheng and Lin Huiyin chose to study architecture in the United States. At that time, Liang's younger brother, Soyong, entered Harvard University to study archaeology, and his little sister, Sezhuang, was studying library science at Columbia University. Architecture, archaeology, and library science were all